Okay, we're here starting section 2.2. The majority of the notes are going to be further down the page, so I'm going to adjust the camera angle in a moment. But the topic here is the multiplication property of equality. We just got through with the addition property of equality. The critical rule for solving equations is going to stay the same, that whatever you do to one side of the equal sign you need to do to the other, or another way to say that is you always do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. Whether you're adding something to both sides, multiplying something on both sides, dividing, subtracting, we're going to do the same thing to both sides of the equal sign. And for those of you who are kind of tracking with some of the themes this term, one of them is the idea that subtraction is really addition, just adding the opposite, changing the sign. And division is really multiplication, just multiplying by the inverse of the second item. So you might notice, or maybe not, that when they list properties of equalities in terms of solving equations, they list a property of addition and they list a multiplication, that you can add the same thing to both sides. You can multiply the same thing to both sides and not change the value of the equation. What they don't say is that you can also subtract the same thing from both sides, and they don't specifically state you can divide the same thing to both sides, but you can, because subtraction is really adding the opposite, adding the negative or the opposite sign of what you already had, and division is really multiplying by the inverse. So I just wanted to keep pointing out that theme so you can really get it in your head. It'll give you a lot more power, a lot more tools when we get further and further into the algebras, that idea of how you relate subtraction back to addition, how you relate division back to multiplication. Okay. That was a long intro. In this section now, because this book is taking you just step by step through the equation solving process, they introduce another property for solving equation. That's the multiplication property. You can multiply both sides of an equation by the same value and they'll still be equal. They want to emphasize that that value is not 0. That way, if you are using multiplication in terms of division, multiplying by the inverse, you won't end up dividing by 0. And we explored that in section 1.8, that idea of dividing by 0 is undefined. Okay, so even though they say this is another property, we have, if you've been following along with the videos and in class, what we're doing is we've just introduced all the steps at once and we're just going through it as a checklist. So our goals and steps are the same as they were in 2.1. And so we're going to go through several examples. We're going to adjust the camera angle. Maybe I guess I'll pause it and just start a new video, and we'll do the middle of the page here. We'll review our goals and our steps, and they're exactly the same as they were from 2.1, only now we're going to deal with a little bit different looking equations.